Test 1, 2. My mic live? Yes, okay. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Pharmacy Seeds Network live stream. This is the Sunday night All Things Natural Net, hosted via amateur radio here on the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club's 146-805 repeater. That's a negative shift of 600 kilohertz and a PL tone of 103.5 hertz. If you're a licensed amateur radio operator here in the Hudson Valley in upstate New York, you're certainly welcome to participate in the net via amateur radio. Hello everyone who's coming into the chat. YTFP, Chris Jarvis, Geeky Gardens. Good to see you guys. Les Hints. Great to see you guys in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and get this net started here shortly. I got a couple of stations here. I have to clear this frequency first. So we'll go ahead and get started. For those who aren't used to the net, if I'm not watching chat, please don't be offended. It's quite a bit to maintain and run a amateur radio net, and I just can't keep track of everything at once. Welcome, Lisa Hopkins. This is KD2 net control for the Sunday night All Things Natural Net. The Sunday night All Things Natural Net is an amateur radio net provided by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club right here in the beautiful Hudson Valley on the 146-805 megahertz repeater with a PL tone of 103.5 and a negative shift of 600 kilohertz. This net is dedicated to farming, gardening, and ecology in general, but the scope of our conversation can certainly go much wider than that. If there are any stations you'd like to check in at this time, please call now. Thanks on the audio feedback, by the way, Kiki.
Kilo Delta 2, Romeo Foxtrot India, KD2, RFI, Bob.
All right, there's Bob. Awesome. I wonder how he's healing up.
Aaron in New Paltz.
Aaron! For those of you who don't know, that's my friend who's helped me with the pie stuff.
KD2, TQS, Ken.
KD2, TQS, Ken. Awesome. Don't worry about it, Kiki.
Take a BHM, but count me as listening because my dinner's just coming out of the oven.
Alright, so far the net recognizes KD2 RFI, Bob, KC2 NDA, Aaron, KD2 TQS Ken, and K2 BHM Jim, who will be on the side because he's eating. If there are any further check-ins, please call now. All the good ones. Yeah, yeah. Alright, no further check-ins recognized this time. We'll come back and look for check-ins again in a little while. KD2 RFI, Bob, you're first on the list. Welcome to the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net, and I hope you're healing up from your surgery. How are you? You guys hear the radio okay?
Hey, KD2 RFI, good evening everyone. It's been a less painful than expected experience, so far I'm doing pretty good. I feel really well. I apologize, I got the scanner on the background. Gonna turn that down in a moment. But I've been, I don't know, I've just been sitting. Pretty much that scanner is my only form of entertainment. And I've been sitting around the house a lot, trying to heal up. Haven't done a whole lot. Let me turn that down a second. Alright, I apologize for that. Hopefully that's a little better. So I've been just sitting, lounging, taking it easy. Haven't done a whole lot of stuff outside. I did get outside a little bit today. Went to a friend's house and pretty much watched them work. So it's interesting. I got about 5 more weeks of this and drive me absolutely nuts. But other than that, all things are good around here. No more bear attacks. Bee situation's looking pretty good as we go into winter. We're just putting sugar syrup on them, and everything's looking good all in all. The only thing I can say that hasn't gone according to plan yet is I am still trying to find canning jars so I can jar up all my honey. It's still sitting on the living room floor.
You telling me something about that YT last week?
Other than that, that's about it here. KD2 RFI, back to net.
Or maybe it was Geeky. All right, very good. Well, glad to hear you're healing up. And boy, yeah, that's a long heal up. I don't know what your surgery was, and you probably don't want to share that over public airways, but I'm glad to hear you are healing. I got to imagine it's driving you nuts sitting around. I know even the few times I've hurt myself or been sick and had to just sit back for a bit, it's hard to even watch somebody work or to even think about the things that I should be doing or want to be doing and can't. So I hear you. The scanner was not really a problem over here, audio-wise, but I imagine it would be distracting on your end. Glad to hear your bees are doing well. I'm glad to hear you're not getting any more bear attacks. I know that was an ongoing issue this year. I know you lost some chickens to it as well, so I'm glad that's under control. And let's see, I want to come back and ask you a question about feeding sugar syrup, but let's go ahead and welcome everyone else here to the net, and we'll circle back around to that conversation. Let's roll on down to KC2NDA. Aaron.
CJ, just wanted to check in on the net, sitting here listening to the radio.
Line. Thanks,
Don't
YT.
have much to contribute at the moment, but I definitely want to listen, so go ahead and turn it back to you, KC2NDA.
All right, very good, Aaron. Glad to hear you on the net here. Haven't heard you on the radio much lately, and it's nice to hear your voice again. And looking forward to some awesome conversations. Hopefully over the winter, the two of us will have a little more time to catch up and talk tech. All right, let's roll on down to KD2TQS. Ken, I'm going to guess back porch chai and happy because you're listening to the net. KD2I and to KD2TQS.
Well, quote a classic Meatloaf song, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. KD2TQS. Sitting in the backyard by the fire pit with a chai. Happy that the net is on. Back to net.
All right, well, by the fire pit would have been my second guess, and it's a little chilly out there tonight, so that's a really nice night to have a fire going. Fantastic. Glad you made it to the net as well. And let's see, Jim was checked in, but he's on the side, I guess, because he's eating. So let's just pause here for a moment, see if there's any further check-ins, and then we'll circle back around to the top of the list. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. Looking for any further check-ins, please call now.
Yep, base is full. KW Jim.
I didn't catch what he said. I thought he said something about full. All right, very good. Doesn't sound like we have any further check-ins at this time, so let's go back to the top of the list. KD2RFI Bob. My understanding is feeding sugar syrup should be a 2-to-1 syrup. Is that correct? And are you feeding your hives, each hive individually, or do you do open feeding? How are you managing that?
KD2RFI. Let me bounce back first to this surgery thing. I don't mind blowing myself up over the radio. I don't care. I tell everyone my life's an open book. If anyone wants to judge me, good for them.
Chinese knockoffs.
I just really don't mind because it draws makes no difference to me. I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable with everything I do or say, and I stand behind everything I do or say, even when I screw up, and sometimes I say sorry. So, but no, anyway, I had a groinal hernia. I've had it for years and finally got repaired. So, it's just one of those things. I feel absolutely great. I feel like I'm ready to run, except I know I can't. It's just amazing the medical advancements have made. For this whole procedure, I haven't even taken pain meds. My theory behind that is the little bit of pain I was experiencing keeps me in check and keeps me slowing down. But now that it's been over about a week and a half now, I think just over a week, and I feel like I'm ready to run a marathon again. But again, I know I can't do much of anything for about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, as long as I want to not wind up back on the gurney again, so to speak. So back to the bees. As far as the bees are concerned, I do a 2-part sugar to 1 part water, measured by volume. So basically, it's each batch I make up, I mix up 2 gallons of water and then 4 gallons of sugar. And so I fills about 18 to 20 quart jars. hive individually. The only complication I have with that is my one top bar hive. It's not really set up to accept feeders, so I kind of just wish them luck as best I can. Every once in a while I will do an open feed-in, but I'll put that well away from the hives. I try and keep it at least 100 yards away from the hives, so we don't encourage too much robbing. And anytime I feed or I put sugar water on, I definitely put reducers on the hives. And again, this time of year it's getting cool, so I'll add the reducers anyway. So it gives the bees an easier job of protecting their resources. And on top of those reducers, I'll put some screen. Actually, it's
3/8 mesh.
I'm not sure what size I'm using right now.
Or half.
3/8 or maybe it's half-inch welded wire screen there. I'm not sure. I'd have to measure it. But just to use as mouse guards, keep the mice from building nests. Because the mice will go in, and I think you said it before, CJ, they'll make an absolute mess of everything if they go in there and build a nest. And if they die in the hive, then you got a big dead mouse in there.
Freaking mess.
A lot of frames that are no good, and it's a real headache. But other than that, that's how I do it. Occasionally I will open feed, but I try not to discourage the robin, or limit it as little as possible. And I put a Boardman feeder with a quart of the 2-to-1 sugar water right in front of the hive. So that seems to work best for me. Kitty 2, RFI, back there.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that information. Interesting. I have an inguinal hernia myself. I've had for probably 20-some years, and I was planning on having that surgery done over the summer. Well, I had a chance to not be huffing and chuffing firewood and such, but then with this whole COVID thing, I was a little hesitant to go on an operating table in a hospital full of people who might be infected. I just didn't want complications, and I certainly didn't want a lung infection and to be coughing coming back out of a surgery like that. So I'm glad to hear you're healing up from that, and looking forward to getting mine fixed at some point in the future. So I totally sympathize with that. On the feeding, that's excellent information. Thank you. I think I'm probably going to do some open feeding here, and yeah, that was my understanding, and a lesson I learned a little bit last year with just putting used frames back out for the bees to go after. A little distance from the hive helps discourage robbing a bit. And let's see, I put my entrance restrictors and screens on earlier this week or late last week, so they're kind of locked down for a little bit better protection. I saw a little bit of infighting going on in those entrances, and I was like, yep, it's time to get those restrictors on. So I went ahead and did that. And I think I'm just going to make up some 2-to-1 SERP like that, and probably just do a bulk feeding because I don't have the equipment for that. As far as jars go, I'm getting some good feedback in the chat here. If you want to check in on the YouTube chat, some of my friends here on YouTube have done some research on jars. They're saying Uline and Amazon both can get you jars. I think Uline's a little bit better on pricing than Amazon, but in the chat there's a good amount of information there. These guys are doing the searches and putting the data back here, so hopefully that'll help you. Glad to hear you checking in the net, and glad to hear you're healing up. Let's roll on down the list here to Aaron, KC2, NDA. On the money.
KC2, NDA. I'm enjoying the talk about the bees.
There you go.
I'd like to eventually learn a little bit more about them. My brother had bees back in the day, and I used to help them every year. And every year I got stung. So he used to wear the whole bee netting and everything else, and sure enough, I was just there helping him with nothing on. Of course, clothes, but And needless to say, the honey was awesome, and I think I stopped helping him after I got stung so many times. But not my fault or their fault. It's just they get agitated when you
steal their
mess with their houses. So in any case, I'm hearing this high listening, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back to Ned.
All right, very good. And I didn't realize your brother had kept bees as well. Yeah, you can't really blame them for being mad about stealing their resources and messing with their hive. Yeah, it's nice to have protective gear. That definitely helps. Although I have had I have had a bee get inside my suit back this spring when I was doing swarm captures. I think it was actually already in the suit when I keep the suit in the greenhouse, and I put it on. I didn't really check it over close, and I went out and captured a swarm, and then I realized there was a bee flying around inside the veil. I didn't panic. I just stayed calm and stepped away from the hives and took the veil off and let her go and didn't get stung. But I've been stung a couple of times this year, getting too close to the hives when they're not in the mood for me to be too close to the hives. So that's awesome. All right, well, we'll roll on down the list here to Ken, KD2 TQS.
Mesmerized by the fire, as always. Enjoying the chit-chat. Waiting for a topic if there's anything to chime in about. And pass it back to now.
All right, very good, Ken. Well, glad to hear you're along for the ride with us. And I guess we'll just pause here and give Jim an opportunity if he wants to jump in. And then after that, we'll do an opportunity for check-ins, and then we'll roll back to the top of the list. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Overlook Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club Sunday night All Things Natural Net. I think I got it. And we're going to roll down to Jim, K2PHM.
Yeah, thanks, CJ. I'm at the same. Okay. I'm eating and processing and so forth and so on, and my cousin has bees, and he's basically allergic to them, and if he gets bit, he has to go to the hospital, but he still keeps bees. I don't know why, but okay, whatever. I'm listening, and anything of interest, I pass on to him, so I'm all ears. K2BHM.
All right, very good. I didn't realize he was allergic to them as well, but yeah, I don't know if that would discourage me from keeping bees either, although a trip to the hospital if you get stung is not a great thing. I know when we did survival camp related stuff and more mission critical sort of things, we always carried at least 1 or 2 EpiPens in our equipment, not because either any of us were allergic to bees, but in the event that someone was, we had a quick way to give them a chance to get to a hospital a little easier. And it's good for other allergic reactions as well, anything related to anaphylactic shock. Anyway, let's just take a pause here and see if there's any further check-ins. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday night All Things Natural Net. Looking for any further check-ins? Please call now. Yeah, Menards. I've heard of that before too. I don't know where that is either. All right, no further check-ins recognized at this time. We'll roll back to the top of the list to Bob, KD2RFI.
KD2RFI. Yeah, jumping back to the surgery a little bit. I tried to plan this for my quote-unquote slow time, but maintaining property and animals and everything else is never really a
real slow time.
There's times that are slower than others. So
more convenient
I tried to
than
fit that
others.
in the middle to try and ease the burden on family members from having to help me out. So far it seems to be working. The sitting still is just totally killing me though. I did see a couple hits on the YouTube channel as far as recommendations on where there's jars and such. I'll definitely follow up on them. So I appreciate all the input from everybody, and if we can hopefully find them for a decent price. And I think I said in the comments there I'm kind of cheap, but I don't want to. Not willing to pay extortion prices for common everyday stuff. So honey's good pretty much forever as long as you leave it properly sealed, and that's where it is right now. It'll be good today in a 5-gallon bucket. It'll be good in 6 months in a 5-gallon bucket. It just might crystallize a little bit, and I might have to invest in a heater to warm it up and reliquefy it. But either way, it's still good, and it's still there. So, other than that, not a whole lot going on. I will be looking at purchasing more chickens this winter, probably around January. I'll probably start considering ordering them. And I go to Murray McMurray Hatchery there. It's where I normally deal with. And try and build up the flock again, try and get some more egg layers going. I'm actually considering considering doing some meat birds too. I know we've had many discussions in the past on meat birds,
too.
so I just wish there was an easier way to, get them ready to put in the freezer. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
So that's about it. I think that's all I got for the moment. I'll send it back to you, CJ. K2 RFI.
Sorry about that, YT. All right, very good. And I totally can relate on the surgery thing. That you're right. There's no time that's really downtime, but there's times that are more convenient than other times. Less busy and less stuff to do. I mean, the honey stores for forever. I'm the same way. I refuse to be price gouged. I'll find another option or just stand by and wait until a better option presents itself. Well, I really hope you find some jars, though, man. I think you said last time we talked, I think you said you had some 350 pounds of honey you're sitting on waiting to jar off and move out. So I know how it is to sit on a resource and have to wait. That's frustrating. What else? I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought. I guess we'll roll on down the list here and pick up KC2, NDA. Sorry, YT, I wasn't on the volume on that one.
I'm here. Just in the middle of doing things. I was wondering if you could kind of go through your honeybee, like what you do with them and throughout the year. If you can go over that real quick, do you mind?
I don't mind. I did speak about this on another thing, but we could sort of go through it. So basically honeybees are, active in collecting resources during the summer and dormant and trying to maintain a colony over the winter so that they can break out and collect resources again the following season. So I guess if we start in springtime, the queen starts laying more eggs in the nest and basically accelerates brood production. So she starts out from a fairly small colony in the spring. That nest has been in cluster and sort of maintaining a homeostatic state, for lack of a better way to describe it simply, over the winter. And then so as spring comes on, she starts laying. They go out, they start grabbing pollen and nectar resources and bringing those back. The pollen is a big part of rearing the brood. That's one of the necessary proteins in order for a healthy brood to be raised. Once we get past spring, the colony starts to expand in size. Oftentimes, if a colony gets too big or feels too crowded, they'll split and swarm. That's kind of a process all in itself. I'll just drop for a sec. KD2 and control for the OMARC Sunday night all things natural net. If they feel a bit crowded, the colony will start producing or making up queen cells, and when a queen lays an egg in that, they'll rear new queens in that, and usually the old queen will take a portion of the colony, fly out and swarm, and find a new place to live, and the new queen will take her place. Without going into a lot of detail, there's a lot of interesting dynamics around queens and queen competition for new queens and all that sort of thing. So that's sort of swarming season is like usually April, May in that area. From there on, we get into June, and flowers and nectar and pollen resources, skyrocket exponentially. What's available in the environment, and the bees take full advantage of that. The colony usually is a pretty good size by then, and they pull those resources back, and they start backfilling up their main brood nest as much as they can. Most of that nest ends up usually being occupied with brood, and so they start building new comb if there isn't already existing comb that's empty, and if there's existing comb that's empty, they'll start filling that with honey. As the season goes on, usually you hit a dearth, which is basically sort of a slow period usually in July or August, depending on the season and the weather. And then as fall comes on, they start. The queen starts reducing the amount of bees that she's laying, and they kind of start preparing for fall. She's not laying as many bees. They start kind of gearing down. I'll drop again. It's really hard to do all this in one little explanation. All right, so fall comes on, and the queen pretty much stops laying, although they do lay some brood over the winter. Sort of a dispute about whether they do or don't do that, but a Canadian beekeeper's blog up in Canada says that his bees do lay brood over the winter, just not very much. So they kind of hunker down as the cool weather comes on. They form what's called a cluster in the nest. Usually that's the lowest part of the nest. Usually with the queen more toward the center, and the bees sort of circulate from inside to outside, maintaining a warm temperature in there. They're trying to maintain 95 degrees in that cluster to kind of get themselves through the winter. They work their way through their resources as a cluster, so they work their way up through the comb as a cluster, as a sort of a condensed colony together. And then that brings us back around to spring, and then they start rearing new brood again. So that's in a nutshell. It's a lot more complicated than that, and there's a lot of other little pieces to that. And I hope I've done it even any justice, because it's really hard to compress that into a short explanation. But that's the long and the short of it, I guess. So I'll put it back to you, and just to see if that answers your question.
Thanks, CJ. Good explanation.
Yeah, thanks, CJ. I like that. That was great. I guess also my question was kind of, what do you do? Do you do anything special? I know my brother used to, go out and periodically check them and things like that, but I was just curious if you did anything special or anything different.
Well, let's see. I'm sort of a new beekeeper, as you know, so I don't have a lot of experience to draw on from personal experience, but in learning from other people who have kept bees for a lot longer than I have, I'm trying to adopt better practices. One of the big pressures that we work against as beekeepers, especially here in the north, there's three main pressures you can run up against from a disease perspective. One is something called a mite. Another one is called the Hive Beetle, and another one is called Nosema, and they're three different things. Here in the north, hive beetles usually aren't too much of a problem. We just don't have the warmer winters. Although some people get them, they're not usually as difficult to deal with as the mite. The mite is called a Varroa Mite, and what it does is it reproduces inside the brood cells in the colony, and it basically kind of robs off of the feed for the brood, and then it sort of piggybacks a ride on the honeybees itself and kind of uses them as their host. And so one of the best things you can do to help mitigate mite issues is to actually break the brood cycle, which is where you basically get the queen to stop laying, although that can be difficult when you're trying to manage the hive. So there's a couple other methods that are used. I'll just drop for a sec. One of them is something called oxalic acid vaporization. That's where we take a powdered form of oxalic acid, we heat it to a pretty specific temperature, and we inject that vapor into the hive. That vapor has a tremendously higher level of toxicity against the Varroa Mite than it does against the honeybees. So you don't hurt the honeybees, at least in theory, and you basically kill off the mite. And that's something that we try to pay attention to this time of year, because you don't want those overwintering in the hive, because if they do, they tend to put a lot more disease pressure on the honeybees. You start out with a bee that's weakened and working against this Varroa Mite pressure, and then they become susceptible to something called Nosema. Nosema is a bacterial gut infection that the bees can get. It's sort of like diarrhea, and it's not a whole lot of fun for them. However, there is some new interesting information. There's a new study out regarding using sunflower pollen, and how sunflower pollen seems to have a tremendous effect against reducing nosema in the hives, in the colonies. And actually, Ian Stepler from a Canadian beekeeper's blog has been growing a lot more sunflowers in recent years, and he actually monitors his nosema levels in his hives. He samples his hives. He's got about 12 to 1,500 honeybee hives, and he monitors those, and he monitors each yard independently, and he takes samples frequently and looks at them under the microscope for nosema, and he's found a tremendous reduction in that nosema pressure since he started making sunflower pollen and nectar available to the bees late season, when they can use that and help build up the immunity and the health of the colony as we go into the winter phase. Thank you, Geeky. And let's see, what else was I going to say about that? I don't know, I lost my train of thought. I'll put it back to you.
Excellent. That's pretty amazing stuff, CJ. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Nick, because I don't want anybody else to be left out.
All right, very good. Yeah, and hopefully I will have Ian Stepler on my show on Truth Frequency Radio in coming months, Comrades in Farms. I'd love to have him on as a guest, and he has attentively agreed to do so, although we have not set a date yet. So that should be an excellent conversation. I really look forward to that. Anyway, let's roll on down the list to KD2 TQS. Ken, I'm sure we must have inspired something from you by now.
KD2 TQS.
Hey, Jem.
Many things, but not convinced we want to go into the microbiology of, is a nosema intrinsic or extrinsic to the animal, and or how's it transmitted? So, your choice if you want to play with that one or not.
Oh, definitely.
That back to that.
Oh, I definitely want to play with that one. Any insight or thoughts you could provide on that would be excellent. Please do.
I have nothing specific on it. I'm just running basic epidemiology on it, going, ooh, that's interesting. How does that get in there? How does that get around?
Oh, that radio is cool.
What most people don't realize is almost all infections are not the bee or the human being taking on new nasties.
Thank
Those
you.
nasties have been there in their
Thank
body
you.
all along. Something in their body has tilted their immune system that now it's out of balance, and that nasty can actually grow. Pneumonia is leading cause of death for the elderly.
Jim.
Almost all of that, 98% of that, is self-inoculation from their own nasopharynx. So it's not an outside nasty to be fought off and killed with an antibiotic. Tweak the immune system, and you don't have to worry about it. So I'm just wondering if nosema, like I say, is an intrinsic pathogen to the bee, or what's... Wondering what the vector is. What's the mode of entry on that pathogen, if you know?
I don't know, but I do know that colony health has a tremendous factorization in that, for lack of better terminology, and I'm very much from the perspective of that's always there, just like all the bad biology that's in our gut. And if we feed bad nutrition and don't support the good biology in our gut, then that good biology depreciates, and then that bad biology has a chance to take hold, and then that's when you get sick. So I'm very glad that you brought that up, and that ties in directly to epigenetics, which is a whole nother can of worms to open. But basically, the nutrition available to a gene determines how that gene expresses itself, and that includes the environment available to that gene, the nutrition, the biology in and on and around that particular ecosystem or sub-part of the ecosystem. Yeah, there's lots of pieces to that. I don't have any specific answers on that. I haven't done a whole lot of research on nosema. Again, I think I mentioned this before, or maybe I didn't finish my point, but I'm very much a hands-off mentality. I like to come from that natural perspective and let the bees or animals or plants or whatever express themselves, and then do everything I can to support them nutritionally and biologically. And that, I believe, is the way it's the way of the future, and the way that things really express their full health and full genetic ability. And the regenerative agriculture movement is starting to really bring people's mentality around to that. Less of a reductionist mentality, more of a systemic, holistic mentality. I'll put it back to you for further comment. KD2IN.
Are you saying you put yourself?
What do you say?
KD2 TQS, as Wadsworth said, come forth
roll on down the list here to K2BHM. Sound like you had a comment. I did not catch what you said before, Jim.
I was just saying, as a comment, do you reap what you sow? It's very interesting. There's a lot of stuff out there, and we need to be more observant.
For sure, I completely agree. One sec here, I gotta adjust my power level. This radio is getting very hot from me talking for so long. KD2I. And I gotta remember how to do it again now.
K2TQS, I'll jump in to give you a cool down time comment.
Thank you.
One statement or extrapolation on the epigenetics aspect is, in terms of biology, identical twin studies are always preferred because there's no biological difference. However, there are many cases where identical twins have different replication or different expression of the genes due to the environmental concerns of their growing up, in particular being either diet or emotional or traumatic issues. So the field of epigenetics is very well defined and is multifactorial. Back to net if you're ready for it.
Absolutely, and thank you for elaborating further on that. Sort of a hard topic to dive into, and I've had this conversation with a few people a few times, and they're very resistant to even that concept that, oh no, everything is genetics. And it's like, well, but as soon as you take a gene and express it in an environment, now you're determined on that environment, you're dependent on that environment on how that gene will express itself. If you take a baby and you put him in a crib and you just don't feed him, how's that gene going to express itself? Well, it's going to die, and that same concept applies on a much more complicated level than we can even dive into entirely here.
So it's the same thing, only different.
Absolutely. All right, let's just make a pause here and make sure we haven't missed anybody. We'll take an opportunity for check-ins here. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. If there are any further check-ins, please call now.
KD2LD, mobile. I'm just going to go in and out. Just want to say hello, but still too far away to really communicate well. I'm going to be static.
All right, very good. Well, glad to hear you check in and out, Bob. Glad to hear from you. And I just want to throw you a little bit of feedback that fig tree is in the greenhouse now and protected. And from the look of it, I've never seen a fig tree go into budding before, but I'm pretty sure it's budding and getting ready to flower. So I may still get some fruit off of that yet. So thanks for sharing that. Much appreciated.
Fantastic to hear. That's great.
All right, very good. Well, we'll let you carry on your merry way. Hope you have a safe trip home, and I hope you had a low-stress day at work today. All right, and we'll just see if there's any further check-ins, and then we'll carry back to the top list. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net, looking for any further check-ins. Yes, seed saving, same thing. It applies to all plants, animals, and humans. And believe it or not, also bacteria, viruses, it goes in all directions, all scales, high and low. All right, no further check-ins recognized this time. Let's go back to the top list to Bob, KD2 RFI.
KD2 RFI is listening very intently on the whole discussion regarding a holistic approach and dealing with genes. Now, it's my understanding, and I'm not into this as heavy and deep or have a comprehensive understanding like you do, CJ. So I'm kind of envious of you in that regard. So I wish I understood a lot of stuff a lot better. As far as genes, there's one beekeeper across the river. He has a bee yard in Dutchess County and down in Florida. I think you're familiar with him, CJ. It's Anarchy Apres. He attempts to raise bees with treatment-free process, but again, he loses about 50% of his colonies every year. I think the numbers might be a little less at this point because he's been doing this for years. genes and traits within his bees, the survival traits, so to speak. And I kind of really totally agree with that. The one thing
The strong survive.
that affects most of us that we cannot do that is
Pesticides.
the amount of chemicals out there. I think Cheerios, Honey Nut Cheerios, came out with a report, I think within the past year, saying they had a high concentration of pesticides within cold cereals. One of my favorite cold cereals. I eat, not because of honey, just as, it tastes good. But I think all the chemicals we're putting on our plants and all, it's fighting against us and everyone else who's trying to do a holistic approach. We don't determine which flowers the bees pick from. And there's really nothing more natural than honey. I can't think of anything more natural than honey. It's the bee's process all on its own. But regardless of how we take care of our bees and whether we treat them or don't treat them, whether we give them sugar syrup or we don't give them sugar syrup, which, as you know, sugar's processed.
Some of that's GMO.
So many environmental factors out there from these companies putting these chemicals on plants and telling you it's the wonder cure for everything. Whether it's on large farmer scale or, your local hardware store who sell a weed killer or pest control or something of that nature. So I would absolutely love to go 100% holistic, and I like to think I'm close to that, but I know I'm definitely not. So
Good question, Lisa. I'm not sure.
As little as possible in the caring of my bees. Unfortunately, this year I did a whole lot, little. I hardly touched the bees all year. But there's so much out there beyond our control, and makes it very difficult to do a 100% pure holistic approach. So it's pretty interesting.
It does.
So definitely keep talking about the genes and all things natural. And hopefully I'll pick up a few things here and there and make myself a better beekeeper, a better gardener, or maybe just a better person in general by the end of the run. KD2, RFI, send it back to you, ZJ.
This is KD2 and Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. And Bob, it's a very complex topic, but the basic rules of it are pretty simple. It's like study and mimic nature, and remember that any organism that you're looking at is working within an ecosystem, and when you're studying that, don't isolate it from the ecosystem, and don't assume that because you see it express itself one way in an ecosystem that's the full extent of how that gene can express itself. I will give you a couple of resources. In fact, I can email you this if you want to check it out. But it's a podcast from a doctor named Dr. Mark Hyman. He's a holistic approach doctor. Anyway, he had a guest on his podcast recently, Dr. Zach Bush, MD. And it's The Doctor's Pharmacy with Mark Hyman, MD, How to Activate Nature's Healing Potential with Zach Bush, MD on Apple Podcasts. And actually, maybe what I'll do is share the link here in the chat if Geeky doesn't beat me to it. But that is an excellent start for you to kind of understand how epigenetics is. And that whole cereal thing with the grains. We have a huge problem in our country with pesticides in and on our food, and this is the primary reason that inspired me to start my YouTube channel and to start doing regenerative farming, was to raise awareness about this, not so that people will be afraid, but so that people understand that there are other options available and that we can move forward. And in working with those ecosystems correctly, we can actually improve yield and health of all plants, animals, and humans. And it goes back to epigenetics, and it means two things. Number one, reducing exposure to pesticides and toxins. Most of these herbicides and fungicides and pesticides are endocrine disruptors. If you know anything about the endocrine system, it is extremely sensitive to any sort of change. And so if you disrupt one part of the endocrine system, you're actually disrupting the entire system, remembering, of course, that it's a system as a whole. So number one is eliminating the toxins and pesticides in the food supply. That's first, because we have to stop doing damage first and foremost. And then once we do that, we can start getting the biology and the health of these ecosystems up. And what that does is improve the trace mineral nutrition, the amino acids, the enzymes, and all those critical functioning pieces that go into that. And you can do incredible changes in very short periods. One of the things that people aren't aware of in most of these studies on GMO is they do these studies for 90 days and then they end the study because they don't want to see what... I think my radio is timing out or overheating. I think it's timed out. Okay. They don't want to see what happens in second and third generation. And when you look at second and third generation, we have a ticking time bomb going here, and we're just starting the third generation of people being exposed to things like glyphosate and so many other toxins in our system. And I use glyphosate or Roundup as an example. The only reason I use that is because it's claimed to be the safest pesticide that's in use today. And if that's the safest one and that's so damaging, what are these other pesticides doing to us? So without going into a long lecture, I'll jump back off my soapbox and we'll roll on down to KC2 and DA.
I think it's over my head or below my head, but it's very interesting. But I think I don't have too much to comment about it, but it sounds pretty cool. I did hear something about leaving leaves on the ground. I think I heard it on the radio or something like that, driving to work. And I was thinking about you. How they're saying leave the leaves on the ground because you'll have a better yard,
Thanks,
better
Bob.
grass. So it all goes into play.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I was trying to tell you about your father-in-law's garden there. And I was trying to tell him, but of course my Spanish is not up to that. But if you take all those leaves and put them into that garden space over the winter, that's going to provide nutrition, protect biology, and supply biology to that soil. You'll notice tremendous differences if you just keep that soil covered. The big thing is, we go out in the sun. Sun is good for us humans in moderation. Everything in the ecosystem in moderation. But if you lay out in the sun for too long, it does damage, right? It does tremendous damage to soil biology in a very short period of time. So the thing is, keep the soil covered. And you can do that with mulches or you can do that with growing plants so that the leaves protect the soil. But that makes a tremendous difference in the soil here. And that's a big part of why I do cover cropping here. I could go on all night about that. But we'll roll on down the list to Ken, KD2 TQS.
Parallel track on the epigenetics, an example that is definitely relatable. I trained in critical incident stress management under one of the founders of it back when there was only 4 CT scanners in the United States. He had his own one of them at NIH doing neurobiology research.
Ken always adds an awesome component to this net.
He had one guy that he studied all people with critical incident stress. And he had one person in particular, Special Forces in Vietnam, surprised that he was still alive after the incident. And when he came back, he interviewed him, and he said, Doc, I'm going to be your best patient. I'm supposed to be dead. I'm your guinea pig. Do whatever you want to do. So they had a really good relationship. They were working for a long time. He came in after a couple of years to say, hey, I'm going on vacation. I want to introduce you to my kids, because we're driving by. And he saw one kid sitting in the chair, calm, cool, collected, and the other one was fidgeting and antsy and all over the place. And he went back in his history and he checked this and that. The calm, cool, collected kid was conceived before his tour of duty in Vietnam.
Yep.
Backing up, the calm, cool, collected one was conceived before he saw his tour of duty in Vietnam. The one that was antsy, nervous, jittery all over the place was conceived after he came back from the traumatic experience in Vietnam. This raised the question in the guy's mind. we had some DNA from before the event. We could look at the DNA before and afterwards and see if there's a genetic trait. So the guy was thinking about it, and he goes, how about a sperm sample? Would that work? Most of the Special Forces guys bank their sperm before they go into combat, because if they don't come back, their wife can still have a child. Drop. So he had the ultimate DNA sample.
That's awesome.
Before and after. They went to the sperm bank, got it, compared it. Sure enough, from the trauma of the event, this guy's DNA had changed, and he transmitted that DNA, the anxiety condition, to his new child.
Hey, Stoned Hobbit.
Proven as a medical fact.
Welcome.
That's an aspect of epigenetics about the mind, mental chemistry, changing the genes and empowering traits to come through. Back to them.
Wow, awesome. Thank you for sharing that story, Ken. Man, you always contribute some awesome stuff. Interesting. I guess we can't really necessarily eliminate, some sort of toxin exposure as well, but that's an awesome comparison, between the different genetics. And there's actually a Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who is helping people change their gene expression through certain pathways, like the NRF2 pathway, using stuff like sulfloraphane, which is a compound that's found in brassicas, and it actually has a tremendous ability to help restore and heal people by changing by turning on and off genes, turning on genes that you want and turning off bad genes. And that's a really complicated discussion as well. But I'm really glad that you brought that example forward, because that's a great, simple way for people to understand how epigenetics has a huge effect. And it's really interesting, the mind component of that. I think as humans, due to this reductionist mentality here in our Western society, we have this tendency to look at everything under a microscope and isolate everything and completely isolate the mind component. But I think that's a huge factor. Our consciousness has tremendous potential, and I think as time goes on, we'll discover just how much potential that has, and how powerful we really are as humans. And when that happens, maybe some of our other political systems and other contaminated systems in the society will change, or those contaminated systems will fade away, and we can move on to a brighter and better future for us and our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren. So let's roll down to Jim, K2BHM.
So since the repeater identified, do I have to? Well, what the heck? Could you be Jim? Yeah, I'm curious. Back, oh my God, 93 or so, I got into the medical industry, and back then, CAT scan was run on deck equipment with, it was a very primitive operating system, and it was based on Johnson & Johnson systems, so forth, and very primitive. And over the years, it became more inclusive and impressive and so forth. And oh God, now the stuff they can do is amazing. So I'm kind of curious as to how things have progressed over the years, and what we've done about it. How we can tell people what to do, what their diagnosis is, what their prognosis is, what the outlook is. KGP Jim.
All right. If you go back to the stream here, Jim, I did share a link in there. I think that's probably a good starting spot. I don't have a whole lot more time left here for this net to get into the deeper eccentricities of that. But yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see what the next 20 years is, because there are some serious changes going on in the scientific community right now. There's a little bit of a turbulence, shall we say, but there are some fantastic new science coming out, and there are some fantastic new researchers who are a little more open-minded, and man, there's some amazing stuff coming out. That's just all I can even say. Let's see. We're going to do a hot spin round here because I have another obligation here at 10 p.m. that I have to get to, so I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty quick, but I didn't want to cut anybody out from one last opportunity to say something. So we'll go back to the top of the list quick to KD2RFI, and we'll go down through the list and take final comments. This is KD2IN Net Control for the Sunday night, All Things Natural Net.
KD2RFI, I'll try to keep it real quick. CJ, thanks for a great net tonight. A lot of good information, a lot of research for me to be doing, and I appreciate it. Definitely be looking into it, and I'm definitely going to be looking forward to the future, leaning towards as much holistic and all natural, not only beekeeping, gardening, and just living as I can. So it's definitely an inspiration sitting here listening to this net. I appreciate it. KD2RFI, back to net.
Very good, Bobby. I look forward to further conversations, and if you're looking for something to look into, don't be afraid to hit me up. I got a ton of resources I can throw at you that'll help keep you entertained while you're healing up. On down to KC2, NDA.
Thanks, CJ. Very informative. I wish I could sit here for hours and talk about this stuff, but obviously time is of the essence. So, excellent. Thank you so much for all this really good information, and all the people that are contributing. It's awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and say 73 and back to net.
All right, very good, Aaron. Well, thanks for participating as always, and yeah, I hate to even cut this short. I wish we could talk longer, but I do have other obligations. Let's roll on down to KD2 GQS.
KD2 GQS, said enough already. Nothing further. Back to net.
Awesome. Thank you, Stone Top. I'm glad you came in. All right, Ken, thank you so much for sharing that information. Really appreciate your contribution to the net here, as I do for everyone. But Ken, you always bring a twist that I'm not aware of and others aren't aware of. It's nice to have new, fresh info come in. On down to Jim, K2BHM.
Thanks, CJ. Not really. I didn't mean to open up a new topic or whatever. Just put something out there for somebody to think about. There's a lot out there, and it's expanding exponentially. So, okay. Thanks. Don't want to hold you up, KDB,
Thanks, Chris. Hey, no worries, Jim. I appreciate you posing those thoughts for people to ponder. Maybe they'll bring it up in the next net, and we can kind of dig into it and expand on it. But always good to leave a rhetorical thought for someone to ponder. Good to have something on the mind ticking that makes you observe things from a different perspective and think about things differently. That's where we make some of our best gains in learning and so many other things in life. All right, well, thank you to everyone who participated in that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. This has been a session of the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net, sponsored by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club and located in beautiful Ulster County, New York. If you want to know more about our club, you can always visit our website at www.omarcclub.org. That's whiskey, Oscar, Mike, Alpha, Romeo, Charlie, Lima, Uniform, Bravo, Oscar, Romeo, Golf. Thanks to all those who participated. A few announcements. Every day at 8:35 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. we have the OMARC Daily Check-In Net, just a general check-in net. You can check in and share your day, hear what other people are up to, and just check in around the Hudson Valley. Thursday nights is the Thursday Night Net. That's run by Dave, K2JLV. That's more of a technically oriented net. Lots of topics, amateur radio, computer, Raspberry Pi, DMR, and so much more. Check that net out too. Always excellent participation, excellent information on that net. And let's see, then tonight is the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net, which you've just participated in or listened to. So thank you to everyone who joined and participated. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net, officially closing this net, returning this frequency to regular amateur use. Thanks to all those who participated. KD2IIN will be clear. 7-3s, everyone. Thank you, guys. Boop, boop. And
Thanks, CJ. Good.
thank you guys for coming in here. Here goes the transition, and Geeky Gardens, thanks for the Paranormal Portal link. I'll see you guys over in the Paranormal Portal if you want to explore the more esoteric side of life. Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
So definitely check them out. But Bobo will be here on Wednesday, and Don and I will be just really excited to have him here and hear what he's got to say about a lot lot of things. So I hope you guys will tune in and be a part of that. If you want any announcements and stuff that are coming up for the Paranormal Portal, please follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio. It's Paranormal Portal Radio because I guess there's some old Paranormal Portal out there that took that one, so I have to put the radio on the end of mine, which is fine because we are a show. We do an internet radio show. But anyway, that's where you can keep up with any of the updates as current. There's not an official Paranormal Portal webpage yet, but there will be. It's a work in progress, so when that gets ready to go and tied up, I'll be sure to let you know about that too. So during the course of tonight's show, if you've got a paranormal event of your very own that you'd like to share, please feel free to call in and be a part of the show. The number is 720-923-0500. That's the number for the show. Again, 720-923-0500. And you can call in and be a part of it if you got something you want to share, or if you just have something you want to say about something that I've mentioned or discussed. I'm always game for that.